How does a single night of careless laughter at a family birthday unravel a marriage, leaving me holding divorce papers and my reputation in tatters? I'm Calantha Dorsey, and I thought I was just having a little fun. I had no idea that one evening would destroy everything I'd built with my husband Adrien. It started at his mother's 61st birthday party. I should have known better than to drink 3 glasses of wine before dinner. But Miriam's house always made me feel suffocated. The beige walls, the careful doilies, the way everyone spoke in hushed tones like we were in a library instead of celebrating. At 32, I felt too vibrant for their world of quiet conversations and sensible shoes. "Calantha, you look lovely tonight," Miriam said when we arrived, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She'd never warmed up to me, not in the 4 years since Adrien and I married. I could feel her judgment in every polite comment, every carefully neutral expression. "Thank you, Miriam. Happy birthday." I kissed her cheek, tasting her powder and disappointment. "I love what you've done with the dining room." She hadn't done anything with the dining room. It looked exactly the same as always, boring floral wallpaper and furniture that belonged in a museum. But I'd learned that compliments, even empty ones, smoothed over the awkwardness that seemed to follow me in this house. Adrien squeezed my hand as we settled into our seats. My husband of 4 years looked handsome in his navy button-down, his dark hair neatly combed. At 36, he had the steady, reliable look of an accountant, which he was. Sometimes I wondered if he'd been born wearing khakis and a calculator watch. "Mum's really happy we could make it," he whispered. "I know these family things aren't your favorite, but it means a lot." I nodded and reached for my wine glass. The Pinot Grigio was decent, better than I'd expected from Miriam's usually conservative choices. Maybe the evening wouldn't be completely dull after all. Our 7-year-old daughter Isa sat between us, carefully coloring in a book Miriam had given her. She had Adrien's serious brown eyes and my wild curls, though we kept hers tamed in neat braids for family occasions. She was the one bright spot in these gatherings, the one person who never made me feel like I was performing for approval. "When do we get to see Grandma open presents?" Isa asked, looking up from her coloring. "After dinner, sweetie," Adrien replied. "Grandma likes to do things in order." Of course she did. Miriam approached everything with the methodical precision of a military operation. Dinner first, then cake, then presents, then coffee. Never any spontaneity, never any surprises. Just the same predictable routine that made me want to scream. My sister Sabine sat across from us with her latest boyfriend, some guy named Derek, who worked in marketing and talked too much about his CrossFit routine. Sabine caught my eye and made a subtle drinking motion, grinning. At 29, she still acted like we were college roommates instead of married women with responsibilities. "So, Calantha," Derek said, leaning forward with the enthusiasm of someone who'd had one too many beers, "Sabine tells me you work in administration. That must be interesting." The way he said interesting made it clear he found my job anything but. I was an administrative assistant at a mid-sized insurance company, and while it wasn't glamorous, it paid the bills and gave me flexibility for Isa's schedule. "It has its moments," I replied, taking another sip of wine. "Though I'm sure it's not as exciting as whatever it is you do in marketing." Derek launched into a detailed explanation of his latest campaign for energy drinks, complete with hand gestures and industry jargon. I tuned out after the first minute, focusing instead on my wine and the growing warmth in my chest. The alcohol was helping me relax, making the evening feel less like a chore and more like entertainment. My mother Judith sat at the far end of the table, nodding politely at Derek's monologue while shooting me warning glances. At 59, she'd perfected the art of silent communication, and her current expression clearly said, "Pace yourself with the wine." I ignored her and reached for the bottle to top off my glass. "Calantha," Adrien murmured, his hand briefly touching my wrist. Maybe slow down a little." "I'm fine," I said, louder than necessary. "It's a party, isn't it? We're supposed to be celebrating." The conversation around the table stuttered slightly, then resumed. I felt a familiar flush of irritation at Adrien's concern. He always did this, monitoring my drinking, my voice level, my behavior like I was a child who couldn't be trusted. It was one of the things that had been driving a wedge between us lately, his constant need to manage and control. Dinner passed in a blur of pot roast and small talk. I contributed to conversations about Issa's school, the weather, and Miriam's garden, but I felt like I was watching myself from a distance. The wine had created a pleasant buffer between me and the suffocating normalcy of the evening. "Should we move to the living room for presents?" Miriam asked as we finished our coffee. "Yes." Issa bounced in her chair. "I want to see what everyone got you, Grandma." We migrated to the living room, where a small pile of wrapped gifts waited on the coffee table. Miriam settled into her favorite armchair, while the rest of us arranged ourselves on the couch and chairs around her. I curled up next to Adrien, feeling loose and giddy from the wine. "This one's from us," Judith said, handing Miriam a medium-sized box wrapped in silver paper. Miriam opened it carefully, preserving the wrapping paper like she always did. Inside was a set of gardening tools with ergonomic handles. Practical, sensible, exactly what I'd expected from my mother. "Oh, these are lovely," Miriam said, examining each tool. "My old ones are getting so worn." "Thank you, Judith." "This one's from Derek and me," Sabine announced, presenting a gift bag with tissue paper. Inside was a scented candle set and some bath salts. Nice enough, but clearly grabbed from the clearance section at Target. I bit back a comment about the obvious regifting. The price tags were still stuck to the bottom of the candles. "How thoughtful," Miriam said, though I could see her trying not to wrinkle her nose at the overwhelming vanilla scent. Then came our turn. Adrien had insisted on getting his mother a cashmere scarf from Nordstrom, something I'd thought was excessive for a woman who rarely left the house. But it was his money and his mother, so I'd gone along with it. "This is beautiful," Miriam said, draping the soft grey fabric around her shoulders. "Much too nice for everyday wear." "Nonsense," Adrien said. "You deserve nice things, Mom." I rolled my eyes slightly. Miriam would probably fold that scarf in tissue paper and store it in a drawer, saving it for some special occasion that would never come. She was the type who kept the good china in the cabinet while eating off paper plates. "And this last one," Miriam said, reaching for a small gift bag, "is from Adrien's sister, Emma." Emma was 24 and worked at a coffee shop while finishing her art degree. She lived in a studio apartment and survived on ramen noodles and student loans. Whatever was in that bag couldn't have cost more than $20. Miriam pulled out what looked like a homemade photo album, the kind you could buy at craft stores for $5. The cover was decorated with ribbon and small silk flowers, clearly a DIY project. I felt a laugh bubbling up in my chest before I could stop it. "Oh," Miriam said softly, opening the album. "Emma, this is—" I leaned forward to get a better look and nearly snorted. The pages were filled with printed photos. Not professional prints, but the kind you made at those kiosks in drugstores. Family pictures, old snapshots, photos from birthdays and holidays over the years. Each picture had a handwritten note underneath in Emma's careful script. "She made this herself," Miriam continued, her voice thick with emotion. "Look at all these memories." The wine had loosened my tongue and lowered my inhibitions. Before I could think better of it, I let out a small laugh. "That's really sweet," I said, though my tone suggested anything but sincerity. "Very crafty." Adrien shot me a sharp look, but I was on a roll now. The combination of alcohol and my general frustration with this family's obsession with sentimental nonsense had loosened my filter completely. "I mean, it's so thoughtful to make something yourself when you can't afford to buy a real gift," I continued, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. Very resourceful. Calantha, Adrien said quietly, but I barely heard him. I reached over and flipped through a few pages of the album, making little comments about the amateur photography and obvious home printing. The silence in the room should have warned me, but I was too caught up in my own performance to notice. "Oh, look at this one," I said, pointing to a photo of Adrien at his college graduation. The caption says, "So proud of our son for building a stable life with a woman he loves." That's adorable. The breaking moment came when Emma, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, reached over and gently pulled the gift bag back toward herself, like she wanted to hide it from me. I was still laughing, still performing for attention, until I saw what I was actually mocking: a handmade photo album with printed pictures and short notes under each one, like a small family museum. The room had gone completely silent. Miriam wasn't looking at me anymore. She was staring down at the album in her lap. Without a word, she reached over and closed it with both hands, like she was closing a door I didn't deserve to reopen. "I think maybe we should call it tonight," Judith said quietly, already reaching for her purse. Adrien stood up abruptly. "Yes, we should get Issa home. It's getting late." "But we haven't had cake yet," Issa protested, looking confused by the sudden change in mood. "We'll have cake another time, sweetheart," Adrien said, his voice carefully controlled. "Say goodbye to Grandma." As we gathered our things and said our awkward goodbyes, I could feel the weight of everyone's disapproval settling around me like a heavy coat. But instead of shame, I felt defiant. So what if I'd had a little fun? So what if I'd pointed out the obvious? Emma's gift was cheap and homemade, and everyone knew it. I'd just been honest about what we were all thinking. The ride home was silent except for Issa's chatter about wanting to make her own photo album. Adrien's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, and I could see the muscle in his jaw working. I knew I was in trouble, but the wine was still coursing through my system, making me feel reckless and unrepentant. "That was uncomfortable," I finally said as we pulled into our driveway. Adrien turned off the engine and sat in the darkness for a long moment. "Uncomfortable?" he repeated. "Calantha, you humiliated my sister in front of the entire family." "I was just being honest," I said, unbuckling my seatbelt. "Everyone was thinking the same thing. I just said it out loud." "No," Adrien said quietly. "Everyone else was thinking about how much love and effort Emma put into that gift. Everyone else was thinking about how meaningful those memories were to my mother. You were the only one focused on the cost." I wanted to argue, but something in his tone stopped me. There was a finality there that I'd never heard before, a distance that made my stomach clench with something that might have been fear. But I pushed that feeling down as we got Issa ready for bed and went through our normal nighttime routine. Tomorrow, Adrien would get over it. Tomorrow, this would just be another family story we'd laugh about eventually. I had no idea that tomorrow would be the beginning of the end of everything I thought I knew about my life. The next evening, I was still feeling restless and defensive about the birthday party incident. Adrien had barely spoken to me all day, giving me polite, distant responses when I tried to bring up normal topics. His disapproval hung between us like a wall, and instead of making me want to apologize, it made me want to rebel even more. "I'm going out with Sabine tonight," I announced, as Adrien sat at the kitchen table reviewing some client files. "She wants to check out that new club downtown." Adrien looked up from his papers. "Tonight? It's Sunday. So, I'm not in high school. I don't have a curfew." I was already heading upstairs to change, not waiting for his response. "What about Issa?" he called after me. "She's sleeping over at my mum's, remember? We planned this last week." That wasn't entirely true. We'd discussed the possibility of Issa staying at my mother's, but I'd only confirmed it this afternoon after deciding I needed a night out. I needed to feel young and attractive and free, not like some boring suburban wife who got lectured for having a little fun at family gatherings. I chose my outfit carefully, a black dress that hugged my curves and showed just enough cleavage to be interesting, paired with heels that made my legs look amazing. When I came back downstairs, Adrien glanced up and his expression tightened. "You look nice," he said carefully. "Very dressed up for drinks with your sister." "Thank you," I replied, checking my makeup in the hallway mirror. "Don't wait up." The club was called Pulse, and it was everything Miriam's house wasn't: loud, flashy, full of energy and beautiful people. Sabine was already there when I arrived, holding court at a high-top table with Derek and a few of their friends. The music was pounding, the lights were low and colourful, and I felt myself come alive in a way I hadn't in months. "Cal," Sabine squealed, pulling me into a hug that smelled like vodka and expensive perfume. "You look amazing. I was just telling everyone about last night. That was hilarious." "It really wasn't that bad," I said, though I felt a small pang of guilt. "Everyone's being way too sensitive about it." "Exactly," Derek chimed in. "People need to learn to take a joke. You were just being real." I accepted a drink from someone, something pink and strong that tasted like fruit and freedom. The alcohol hit my empty stomach quickly, adding to the buzz I was already feeling from the atmosphere. This was what I'd been missing, what my marriage had been lacking. Excitement, spontaneity, the feeling of being desired and appreciated. "Oh my God, is that Jesse Lynn?" Sabine pointed toward the bar, where a tall, athletic guy with perfect hair was ordering drinks. Jesse was my personal trainer at the gym, though I hadn't been to a session in weeks. He was 34, single, and had the kind of body that made other women stop and stare. He was also charming in a way that Adrien wasn't, flirtatious, playful, the type who made you feel like the most interesting person in the room. "Jesse," I called out, waving him over. He turned and his face lit up when he saw me. "Calantha, you look incredible. What are you doing here?" "Living my best life," I replied, feeling bold and reckless. "Want to join us?" He did join us, sliding into our group like he belonged there. He bought rounds of drinks and told funny stories about his other clients, always careful not to mention names, but giving just enough detail to be scandalous. I found myself leaning closer to him, laughing louder at his jokes, touching his arm when I talked. "We should dance," I announced when the DJ started playing something with a heavy bass line. "I don't really dance," Derek said, but Jesse was already standing up. "I do," he said, extending his hand to me. The dance floor was crowded and dark, bodies pressed together in the pulsing lights. Jesse was a good dancer, confident, rhythmic, the kind of guy who knew how to move his body in ways that made women notice. We started out casual, just moving to the music in the general vicinity of each other. But as the drinks kicked in and the music got more intense, we moved closer together. His hands found my waist, my arms went around his neck. We were grinding against each other in a way that would have been inappropriate anywhere but a crowded dance floor, and I didn't care. I felt alive for the first time in months, desired, attractive, young. This was who I really was, not the boring suburban wife who got criticized for having opinions, but a vibrant woman who could command attention and make men want her. "You're trouble," Jesse murmured in my ear, his breath hot against my neck. "The best kind," I replied, pressing closer to him. I was vaguely aware of phones coming out, of flashes going off around us, but I was too caught up in the moment to care. Let people take pictures. Let them see that Calantha Dorsey wasn't some repressed housewife who apologized for having fun. The song changed to something slower, more sensual, and Jesse pulled me even closer. We were barely dancing now, just swaying together in a way that was definitely crossing lines. His girlfriend Tasha was somewhere in the club. I'd seen her earlier, giving me cold looks from across the room, but I pushed that thought away. "Your husband's a lucky man," Jesse said, his lips almost touching my ear. "He doesn't seem to think so lately," I replied, surprising myself with my honesty. "His loss," Jesse said, and spun me around so my back was against his chest. That's when I saw Sabine at the edge of the dance floor, her phone out, recording us. She was grinning and giving me thumbs up, clearly thinking this was all harmless fun. Around us, other people were doing the same thing, taking videos, posting to social media, capturing the moment for posterity. I should have stopped then, should have stepped away, made some excuse about needing another drink or using the bathroom. But the music was intoxicating. Jesse's hands on my hips felt amazing, and I was tired of being the good wife who worried about appearances. So I leaned back against him and kept dancing, letting him guide my movements, letting the music and alcohol and attention wash over me like a drug. For 20 minutes, I felt like the most desirable woman in the room. It wasn't until later, when we finally made our way back to the table, that I started to notice the looks we were getting. Tasha was standing by the bar, her arms crossed, staring at us with undisguised hostility. Some of Sabine's friends were whispering and glancing in my direction. Even Derek looked uncomfortable. "That was fun," Jesse said, but he seemed to be pulling back now, creating distance between us. "I should probably find Tasha." "Of course," I said, trying to sound casual. "Thanks for the dance." As he walked away, I felt the first stirrings of unease. The alcohol was starting to wear off, and reality was creeping back in. I was a married woman with a 7-year-old daughter, and I'd just spent 20 minutes grinding on another man in front of a room full of people with cameras. "That was hot," Sabine said, sliding up next to me. "You two have serious chemistry." "It was just dancing," I said, but my voice sounded uncertain even to me. "Uh-huh," Sabine replied with a knowing smile. "Just dancing. That's why half the club was recording it." My phone buzzed with a text message, then another, then several more in quick succession. I pulled it out and saw notifications from Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, people tagging me in videos and photos from the night. The first video I clicked on made my stomach drop. It was a 30-second clip of Jesse and me on the dance floor, his hands on my hips, my body pressed against his, moving together in a way that looked incredibly intimate. The caption read, "Someone's having fun tonight." "Oh God," I whispered, scrolling through more posts. There were at least a dozen videos and photos from different angles, all showing the same thing. Me, clearly married based on my wedding ring, dancing inappropriately with a man who wasn't my husband. "It's fine," Sabine said, though she looked less certain now. "It's just social media. Adrien doesn't even have Facebook." But I knew it wouldn't matter whether Adrien was on social media or not. In a town like ours, gossip traveled fast, especially gossip about married women behaving badly in public. Someone would make sure he saw these videos, if they hadn't already. I tried to enjoy the rest of the night, but the magic was gone. Every time I saw someone with their phone out, I wondered if they were recording me. Every whispered conversation felt like it was about me. Even Jesse kept his distance for the rest of the evening, sticking close to Tasha and avoiding eye contact. When I finally got home around 2 in the morning, the house was dark and quiet. Adrien's car was in the driveway, which meant he was home, probably asleep. I crept upstairs as quietly as possible, but when I peeked into our bedroom, I could see he was awake, staring at the ceiling. "How was your night?" he asked without looking at me. "Fine," I said, starting to undress. "Just drinks with Sabine and her friends." He replied non-committally. I wanted to say something more, to explain or justify or deflect, but I wasn't sure what. Nothing had really happened after all. I'd danced with someone, had a few drinks, blown off some steam. Married people were allowed to have fun, weren't they? But as I lay in bed next to my silent husband, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted irrevocably. The videos were out there now, permanent evidence of a moment that had felt liberating, but now seemed reckless and stupid. My phone buzzed again with another notification. This time it was a message from an unknown number. "Thought you should know this is making the rounds. Might want to do some damage control." Attached was a screenshot of one of the videos, already shared dozens of times across multiple platforms. In the comments, people were speculating about who I was, whether I was married, what my husband must think. I turned off my phone and pulled the covers over my head, but I couldn't shut out the growing certainty that my night of innocent fun was about to become something much bigger and much more destructive than I'd ever imagined. I woke up Monday morning to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. My phone had been buzzing all night, but I'd kept it on silent, hoping the storm would somehow blow over while I slept. Instead, it had gotten worse. The first message I read was from my mother. "Calantha, call me immediately. People are talking." The second was from Jennifer Wu, my colleague at the insurance office. "Girl, you're famous. Check Facebook." The third was from a number I didn't recognize. "Your husband deserves better, you disgusting slut." My hands shook as I scrolled through the rest of the messages. Most were from friends and acquaintances, some concerned, some gossipy, some clearly just wanting to insert themselves into the drama. A few were from strangers who'd somehow gotten my number, and those were uniformly nasty. Adrien was already gone when I came downstairs. His coffee cup was in the sink, and there was a note on the kitchen counter. "Took Issa to school. We need to talk tonight." The formal tone of the note sent a chill through me. Adrien never left notes unless he was angry. Really angry, not just annoyed. This was the kind of note he might leave for a roommate, not his wife of 4 years. I called in sick to work, claiming a stomach bug, and spent the morning trying to assess the damage. The videos from the club had spread far beyond the original posts. They'd been shared in local Facebook groups, posted on neighborhood apps, and even picked up by some gossip accounts with thousands of followers. The comments were brutal. People had figured out who I was, where I worked, where my daughter went to school. They'd found my social media profiles and were dissecting every photo, every post, looking for more evidence of my moral failings. "What kind of mother behaves like this?" one comment read. "I feel sorry for her husband," said another. "Someone should call Child Protective Services," suggested a third. I tried to delete the posts I could control, block the people sending nasty messages, and report the videos for harassment, but for everyone I removed, 3 more seemed to pop up. The internet had latched onto my story, and there was no stopping it now. My phone rang, and I saw my mother's name on the screen. "Calantha Marie Dorsey," Judith said without preamble. "What in God's name were you thinking?" "Mum, it's not as bad as it looks." "Not as bad?" "Honey, Mrs. Patterson from down the street called me at 7 this morning to ask if you were having a nervous breakdown. The video has been shared in the church Facebook group. Pastor Williams wants to schedule a meeting with you and Adrien." I sank onto the couch, feeling the walls closing in around me. "It was just dancing, Mum. I had a few drinks and danced with someone." "That's not a crime." "Dancing?" Judith's voice rose an octave. "Calantha, you were practically having sex on that dance floor, with your wedding ring clearly visible. Do you have any idea how this reflects on your family?" "I wasn't having sex with anyone," I snapped. "God, why is everyone being so dramatic? It's 2023, not 1953. Women are allowed to have fun without everyone clutching their pearls." "Fun?" Judith was quiet for a long moment. "Sweetheart, is everything okay with you and Adrien? Because this doesn't look like someone who's happy in her marriage." That hit too close to home. "My marriage is fine," I said quickly. "Adrien's just being controlling about this whole thing. He's always been jealous and possessive." Even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. Adrien wasn't controlling or possessive. He was steady and reliable, and maybe a little boring, but he'd never tried to control my friendships or activities. If anything, I'd been the one pushing boundaries, testing limits, seeing how far I could go before he'd finally react. "Honey," Judith said gently, "maybe you should consider couples counseling. This kind of behavior, it's not like you." But it was like me, that was the problem. This was exactly like me. The part of me I'd been suppressing for years, the part that wanted attention and excitement and validation from men who weren't my husband. I'd just never let it loose so publicly before. After I hung up with my mother, I decided to take control of the narrative. If people were going to talk about me anyway, I might as well tell my side of the story. I opened Facebook and started typing. I'm disappointed by the judgmental comments and messages I've been receiving about a night out with friends. Dancing is not a crime, and having fun is not a betrayal of my family. My husband and I have a strong, trusting relationship built on mutual respect and independence. We don't need to be attached at the hip to prove our commitment to each other. For those of you spreading rumors and making assumptions about my character based on a few seconds of video, I suggest you examine your own lives before casting stones at mine. Live and let live. Strong marriage, no shame. I hit post before I could second-guess myself, then sat back and waited for the support to pour in. Instead, the comments that appeared were even worse than before. Strong marriage, is that what you call it? Wrote someone named Patricia Miller. Your poor husband, added Maria Santos. He must be so humiliated. This is what happens when women think feminism means acting like men, commented Robert Hayes. No respect for marriage or family values. I started deleting the negative comments as fast as they appeared, but there were too many. For every supportive friend who liked my post, 5 strangers appeared to tear me apart. I was fighting a losing battle against the internet's capacity for judgment and cruelty. Around noon, my phone rang with a call from Isa's school. Mrs. Price? It was Mrs. Henderson, Isa's teacher. I wanted to check in about Isa. She seemed a little distracted today, and I wanted to make sure everything was okay at home. My blood ran cold. What do you mean, distracted? Well, some of the other children were talking about something they'd seen online involving their parents. You know how kids pick up on things. I just wanted to make sure Isa wasn't being affected by any family stress. So it had reached the school. Other parents had seen the videos and were talking about them in front of their children, who were then bringing that gossip to school and discussing it with my daughter. The humiliation was complete. Everything's fine, I managed to say. Just some silly social media drama. You know how people love to gossip. Of course, Mrs. Henderson said diplomatically. But if you need any support or resources, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're here for Isa. After I hung up, I called Sabine. Cal, thank God, she said immediately. I've been trying to figure out how to help. This has gotten completely out of hand. You think, I said bitterly. My daughter's teacher just called because kids at school are talking about their slutty mother. It's not that bad. It is that bad, Sabine. People are calling me a whore and a terrible mother. They're saying Adrien should divorce me. They're talking about calling child services. Okay. Let's think about this rationally, Sabine said. Maybe you should take down that Facebook post. It's kind of defensive. It's making people angrier. I'm not taking down anything, I said. I have a right to defend myself. But maybe a different approach. Something more apologetic. Apologetic for what? For having fun? For being a human being instead of a perfect little housewife? Sabine was quiet for a moment. Cal, I love you, but maybe you could acknowledge that you crossed a line. I mean, if Derek was dancing like that with another woman, I'd be pretty upset. The betrayal stung. My own sister, who'd been encouraging me just the night before, was now joining the chorus of people telling me I'd done something wrong. Whose side are you on? I asked. Yours, Sabine said quickly. Always yours. I just think maybe some damage control. I hung up on her and threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor, but kept working, continuing to buzz with notifications I didn't want to read. The afternoon stretched endlessly. I tried to distract myself with Netflix, with cleaning, with anything that would stop me from checking social media. But the silence in the house was oppressive, broken only by the occasional buzz of my phone and the growing certainty that my life was spiraling completely out of control. When Adrien came home with Isa at 5:30, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of wine, trying to look calm and composed. Mommy. Isa ran to hug me, and I held her tight, breathing in her familiar scent of school and childhood innocence. "How was school, baby?" I asked. "Good," she said, but her voice was subdued. "Some kids were being weird, though." Adrien and I exchanged a look over her head. His expression was grim. "Why don't you go start your homework?" he suggested to Issa. "Mommy and I need to talk." After she disappeared upstairs, Adrien sat down across from me at the table. He looked tired, older than his 36 years, like he'd aged a decade in the past 24 hours. "I've been getting calls all day," he said quietly. "From co-workers, from friends, from people I barely know. Everyone wants to know if I've seen the videos." "And what did you tell them?" I asked, taking another sip of wine. "I told them it was a private matter between my wife and me." He paused. "But then I saw your Facebook post." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. I have a right to defend myself. "Defend yourself from what, Calantha? From the evidence of what you actually did?" "I danced with someone, that's all. Why is everyone acting like I committed adultery?" Adrien pulled out his phone and set it on the table between us. "Because this isn't just dancing." He pressed play on a video I hadn't seen before, one taken from a different angle that showed even more clearly how intimate my dance with Jesse had been. In this version, you could see my face clearly, see the way I was looking at him, the way I was pressing my body against his. It looked like foreplay, not dancing. "I can explain," I started. "I don't want explanations," Adrien said. "I want to understand why my wife of 4 years, the mother of my child, thought this was appropriate behavior." "Because I'm not dead," I exploded. "Because I'm 32 years old, and I'm tired of feeling like I have to apologize for being alive. You want me to be some perfect little housewife who never has fun, never talks to other men, never does anything that might embarrass your precious family." "I want you to be my wife," Adrien said simply. "I want you to act like someone who's committed to this marriage and this family." "I am committed." "Are you?" He leaned forward. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're committed to Jesse Lynn and whoever else makes you feel young and desirable." The accusation hung in the air between us like a bomb waiting to explode. I wanted to deny it, to reassure him, to fix this somehow. But I was tired of apologizing, tired of making myself smaller to make him comfortable. "Maybe I am," I said quietly. "Maybe I'm tired of being taken for granted." Adrien stared at me for a long moment, then stood up and walked to the window. When he turned back, his face was completely calm, which somehow scared me more than if he'd been yelling. "I'm going to sleep in the guest room tonight," he said. "I need some time to think." "Adrien." "No," he said firmly. "I'm done talking for today. But Calantha, you need to figure out what you want. Because this—" He gestured at the phone, at the videos, at the mess I'd created. "This isn't sustainable." He left me sitting alone at the kitchen table with my wine and my defiance, and the growing certainty that I'd just crossed a line I could never uncross. Tuesday morning at work was fresh humiliation. Colleagues huddled over phones, scattering when I approached, Jennifer Wu smirking. "Quite a night on Sunday, Calantha." Eyes followed me all day. Conversations died as I passed. My phone buzzed relentlessly with notifications, each one tightening the knot in my stomach. Mrs. Chen summoned me to her office. "Clients have raised concerns about our professional image due to your social media presence," she said carefully. "No firing yet, but a clear warning to lock down my accounts and tone it down. 30 seconds of dancing now threatened my job." Home, Adrien waited at the kitchen table, laptop open. "We need to talk about legal options," he said. "Separation, possibly divorce." I stared, stunned. "Over videos? It's about respect, or the lack of it." He showed my latest Facebook post defending myself, comments piling on, tagging friends, turning our marriage into public spectacle. "You humiliated me, then claimed we're fine while justifying grinding on another man." Before I could reply, Miriam called. She demanded lunch tomorrow at Giovanni's, alone. The restaurant felt like a trap. Tasha Lynn arrived first, glaring across the room with friends, phone ready. Miriam appeared precisely at noon, navy dress impeccable. "I've seen the videos," she began. "I'm concerned for Adrien and Issa." She dismissed my explanations. "Issa faces whispers at school because of you. This won't blow over. People still talk about scandals from decades ago." Bluntly, "I've never liked you. You're selfish, immature." But I stayed silent for Adrien and Issa. "Now, if you keep embarrassing my son, I'll help him get custody. I have resources, connections, a grandson who's a family law attorney." The threat landed hard. "What do you want? Choose. Attention and validation, or your family. You can't have both." She left me with barely touched salad and restaurant whispers. Tasha intercepted me in the parking lot. "Thanks for showing me Jesse's true character. We're done." "You destroyed 2 relationships with one dance." Home, Adrien's note. He'd picked up Issa early for dinner at his mother's. I was excluded from my own daughter's life. Sabine texted about Tasha's new video. Maybe time for that apology. Alone, fear replaced defiance. My refusal to own the damage, pride, defensiveness, had poisoned everything: marriage, job, reputation, motherhood. Consequences mounted relentlessly. I wasn't the victim. I was the architect of my own unraveling, and surrender might be my only path left. The morning after Adrien slept in the guest room, I found his suitcase by the door. He was leaving for his mother's, needing space and stability for Issa. "Issa's stability is here, with both of us," I protested. He showed me my latest Instagram story, a defiant quote about strong women and no apologies. Kids at school were bullying Issa, calling me a bad mummy, because of the viral dance video. She'd pushed a boy defending me and came home crying. At school, the principal confirmed Issa's stress. Fights, declining focus, parental concerns. That evening at Miriam's, she warned me, delete social media, apologize genuinely, get counseling, or face family court. Issa asked if we were divorcing. "I made mistakes," I admitted. "I'm going to try to fix them." Alone later, an anonymous text arrived. Adrien had hired a lawyer. My pride had turned 30 seconds of dancing into the unraveling of my marriage and my daughter's world. Time was running out to choose humility over defensiveness. 3 weeks after the infamous birthday dance went viral, Adrien's lawyer called. I arrived at the sleek downtown office in a navy suit, nerves frayed, rain matching my mood. Adrien sat composed across the table, flanked by attorneys. His lawyer, Amanda, presented the evidence. The viral video titled, "When Soccer Moms Go Wild," my defensive social media posts, school reports of Issa's fights, anxiety, and declining grades. Parents' emails begged to keep their kids away from her. Adrien spoke quietly. "You chose ego over family." Issa asked why mommy dances with other men. They offered separation, mandatory counseling, supervised visitation, social media blackout, or full custody battle in court. Tears streaming, I signed. It wasn't forgiveness, only a fragile path forward. I'd destroyed my marriage and hurt my daughter through pride and recklessness. The viral scandal would linger forever, but perhaps I could still become someone worthy of redemption,